The governor of Texas threatened to arrest Democratic lawmakers who fled the state to block a draconian new voter suppression law designed to keep Republicans in power. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. I'm sure I don't have to remind you that the 2020 election results were, for the most part, very bad for Republicans. Yes, they won back seats in the House, but they lost the popular vote by 7 million to a Democrat who got the most votes in American history. They lost the Electoral College in a landslide, and they even lost several states that were historically red, like Georgia and Arizona, where they also lost all 4 Senate seats. In fact, Biden, his win in Georgia was confirmed so many times, he turned it into a joke when he was campaigning there for the Democratic Senate candidates.
Thank you for standing strong to make sure your voices were heard, your votes were counted, and counted, and counted again. I'm starting to feel like I won Georgia 3 times.
One of the few things I'll miss about COVID-era politics is the drive-in rallies. It's the only time in history we'll be able to look back and ask, was he giving a speech or crossing against the light? I know it was Georgia, but the sound of honking just makes it feel like New York, like he should have been up there with a Times Square Spider-Man and a cigarette-smoking cockroach. Can you believe this Mets bullpen? They blew a 5-run lead against the Pirates. What do you mean I can't vote because I'm a cockroach? I have a valid ID. It was like that stage is in the middle of 42nd Street during rush hour traffic. I won Georgia 3 times. I don't care if you won. Miss America, I gotta get this ass to JFK. I'm sorry, did you just call me an ass? Oh, sorry, pal. I thought you couldn't hear me over the taxi TV. Actually, I'm trying to turn down the taxi TV. Do you know how to do that? Hey, I didn't put it there. Take it up with Cat Greenleaf. Now, the losses in Georgia and Arizona really freaked out Republicans because it meant the electoral map was shifting. States that were traditionally red were suddenly in play, and the GOP's built-in advantage in the Electoral College was eroding, and that was especially evident in Texas, where Trump won with the smallest margin for a Republican in 24 years, and Biden got the largest percentage of any Democratic candidate since Jimmy Carter won the state in 1976, a fact that surprised me because everything's bigger in Texas, but according to this photo, Jimmy Carter is super small. When I was young and I heard him referred to as a peanut farmer, I assumed he farmed peanuts, but was he a farmer the size of a peanut? And don't get me wrong, he's the best. I love him. He's a world-renowned humanitarian, human rights activist. I'm just saying, judging from this photo, if he tried to wear a cowboy hat, he'd get lost in it. Rosalind, help, I'm stuck in the hat. Again, as a reminder, I spent the last 2 weeks in impression camp. The point is, Republicans are terrified of the possibility that Democrats could continue making gains in Texas and potentially win the state's electoral votes in a future presidential election. They're not hiding it or being shy about it. Here's Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick at the Conservative Political Action Conference over the weekend telling the crowd that if they lose Texas, they'll lose the entire country.
In Texas, we are the last man standing. There are a lot of conservative and red states around the country, but if we fall, America falls. The electoral votes of New York, California, and New York combined together means we could never elect a conservative or Republican to the White House ever again. I can tell you that as the Lieutenant Governor of this great state that I'm blessed and honored to serve, we're not ever going to let that happen.
Why do these guys always sound like overexcited LARPers in the park? By order of the Queen, I shall not allow this heresy. Calm down, Dan. You work at Hobby Lobby. So now, though, they're just admitting it. They don't want to lose Texas. That's what this is all about. And it's one thing to say, we can't lose Texas, so we have to work on our message and our policies. It's another to say, we can't lose Texas, so we're changing the rules. It's like Subway deciding between actually using tuna or calling it tuna and hoping no one notices. So Texas Republicans are afraid that if Democrats make gains, that they could be locked out of the White House for the foreseeable future. And they're desperate to preserve their political power in the state any way they can. By Patrick's own admission, GOP success nationally depends on Republicans keeping control in Texas, which is why Texas Governor Greg Abbott called a special legislative session for this month to pass a series of draconian voter suppression laws.
In Texas, the state legislature is set to vote this week on 2 restrictive voting bills. The legislation moved forward yesterday after a heated debate. Critics say the measures unfairly harm black voters.
The proposed Texas legislation includes banning 24-hour and drive-through voting, new voter ID requirements for mail-in ballots, and expanding the powers of partisan poll watchers.
They want to ban drive-through vote. How can you be against drive-throughs? The pandemic has been a nightmare, but one thing it's taught me is I love not having to get out of my car. Last week I had my appendix removed, and I just left the engine running. There's nothing. One more time. What was that look? Great. Great. Definitely glad we saw the open cut. There's nothing more American than a drive-through. If you ask me, not only should you be able to vote via drive-through, but while you're there, you should also be able to deposit a check, get your car washed, and pick up a Doritos Locos Taco Supreme. Doritos Locos Taco Supreme, made with 100% all-natural beef. That's beef with 3 E's and a PH. These bills are obviously designed to make voting harder, and in particular, target black voters. For example, in an earlier version of the bill, it would have implemented a ban on Sunday voting before 1 p.m. because GOP lawmakers were targeting souls to the polls, the longtime practice by black congregations that encourages members to go vote after Sunday morning services. And of course they were targeting black voters. What other possible excuse could they have for banning voting on Sunday mornings? Did they not want to bump up against everyone's weekly yoga in the park class? Because we're all capable of doing both. I can get up first thing in the morning to vote and then make my way over to the top of the long meadow in time to do child's pose. Linda, I know you're mad because I was 5 minutes late last week and I immediately skipped to cat-cow, and you said you have to start in child's pose. It represents birth. And I said, oh, does it, Linda? Is that what it represents? Can you tell me more since this is my first time doing yoga, Linda? Also, I know it was you who farted, Linda. Republicans ended up backtracking and removing that provision after a backlash, although their explanation of what happened was ludicrous. They claimed they weren't targeting black voters. The bill had just been misprinted and nobody caught it.
When I read what I think is the final version of this legislation, it limits the number of hours that a county can have early voting on a Sunday, which some people will think is targeted directly at souls to the polls, black church events. Can you tell me why limiting the number of hours of voting on a Sunday would make elections more secure?
And actually, that's one of the things I look forward to with fixing the most. Call it a Scribner's error, whatever you want to. But I talked to our team yesterday, kind of regrouping of what happened. That was not intended to be reduced. I think there was call it a mistake if you want to. What should have been 11 was actually printed up as 1.
First of all, 11 doesn't make any more sense than 1. Why would banning early voting before 11 a.m. on Sunday make elections more secure? You guys afraid the poll workers would be too hungover to detect fraudulent ballots? My vision's super blurry this morning, but your ID looks good to me, Mr. Cockroach. Cockroach? I'm a cicada, you dunderhead! Never been insulted in all my life, which, as you all know, is 17 years. 17 years, I'm still in my prime. You gotta be 18 to vote. Oh! How convenient. This is cicada suppression. So that provision was eventually removed after a backlash and a walkout by Texas Democrats, but still, it's been clear from day one what this is all about. Republicans admitted it. They want to hold on to power in Texas. And let's also just keep in mind that Texas is already arguably the most difficult state to vote in. Even just registering to vote is a hassle. Unlike 40 states, Texas has no online registration. Anyone who wants to sign up voters must be deputized by each county he or she works in every 2 years, which makes statewide voter registration drives nearly impossible in a state with 254 counties. Good Lord. Sounds like the directions to one of those board games you only find in upstate B&Bs. Anybody up for a game of municipal paper chase? Hold on. Wi-Fi's back on. Thank God. Second, the only situation where I'd ever want to be deputized is as the nerdy sidekick to an outlaw cop played by Bruce Willis. In the whole movie, I'd be begging him to deputize me, and he'd refuse. And then at the end, there'd be a climactic, heartwarming moment right before we storm the bad guy's hideout where he puts his arm on my shoulder and says, Myers, I hereby deputize me to be my deputy. And yes, in this movie, I play myself just because it's easier. I don't want to have to remember all my character details like a fake name or a job. I mean, despite what you might think from all my flawless impressions, I'm not a professional actor. It's just a side hobby of mine that I happen to be very good at. Stanislavski begged me to teach him. He pleaded with me, please teach me how you do your Vince Vaughn impression. And I'd say, buddy, you gotta relax. I should admit, Impressions Camp was a camp you go to make you stop doing impressions. Anyway, the rules in Texas are already clearly skewed to the type of voters Republicans want to show up to the polls. For example, under the state's voter ID law, a handgun permit is an acceptable form of identification, but a state university issued ID is not. That's really the whole game. The only way it could be more obvious is if they said you can't use a driver's license, but you can use a MAGA online store frequent shopper card. So those are the rules that already exist in Texas. Now, Republicans want to make it even worse, which led Texas Democrats to flee the state in a last-ditch attempt to stop the bills from passing. And Fox News criticized the Democrats for bringing beer with them.
Texas state Democrats are in Washington, D.C. this morning after leaving the state in an attempt to block Republican efforts to pass a bill making it harder to vote. More than 50 House Democrats got on a plane and flew to D.C. on Monday afternoon, vowing to stay away from Texas until next month so that Republicans can't vote on anything. Lawmakers need a quorum, a certain number of members present, in order to vote.
58 Democrats, Texas Democrats, are taking a stand against Republican voting bills by, what do? They hopped on a couple of private jets and they're flying to D.C., but of course first they have to take some selfies to show the folks what they're
And they grabbed the beer.
They did, a case of Miller Lite, I think.
Why do Republicans think it's a gotcha to point out they had a case of Miller Lite? So what, is the GOP really going after Texan beer drinkers now? Everyone knows real Americans drink vodka, peach schnapps, and cranberry juice. And yeah, that's a sex on the beach, or as it's known in Texas, a throwdown at the hoedown. Now, if you're the Republicans and you want to dispel the impression that this is just an authoritarian power grab, the absolute last thing you'd want to do is threaten to arrest the Democrats who fled the state, and yet that's exactly what Abbott did.
I can and I will continue to call special session after special session after special session all the way up until election next year. And so if these people want to be hanging out wherever they're hanging out on this taxpayer-paid junket, they're going to have to be prepared to do it for well over a year. As soon as they come back in the state of Texas, they will be arrested. They will be cabined inside the Texas Capitol until they get their job done.
A surefire way to make clear you're the villain in any situation is to threaten to arrest your opponents, especially in the South. You sound like Boss Hogg threatening to round up those Duke boys. Oh, I'm going to get them Duke boys, and when I do, we're going to cabin them inside the Capitol. But somehow, another Texas politician managed to outdo Abbott in terms of pure shamelessness, and I'm sure by now you've guessed who it was.
What you're seeing the Democrats do here is a political stunt. And, I will say it's ironic. As they were getting on their private jet to fly to Washington, D.C., they almost surely had to show identification to get on that jet. And yet they're doing this in a fit because they don't want mail-in ballots to be verified. They don't want the signatures to be verified. They don't want basic integrity steps to be strengthened in the state of Texas. This is, at the end of the day, politics, and they need to get back to doing their jobs.
It's not ironic that they had to show ID to get on a plane, since unlike voting, flying on a plane is not a sacred right protected by the Constitution. There's no Article 10 that grants every American the right to get your elbows slammed by a drink cart while the dude across from you spends 10 minutes trying to cram a suitcase into an overhead compartment that's too small. Of course, if Republicans really wanted to treat flying the way they treat voting, then every plane would be forced to idle on the tarmac for hours while they wait to take off, because there's only one runway open and it would be illegal to serve snacks, not even Sun Chips, which are barely food. It's like eating salsa-flavored packing peanuts. I'm pretty sure there's less actual food in Sun Chips than there are in Subway tuna. Republicans have come out and said what this is really all about. They don't want to lose Texas, and they're willing to change the rules to stop that from happening. It couldn't be more obvious. They admitted it. They just haven't succeeded yet. They couldn't pass these bills the first time. They might not be able to pass them this time. So if they want to ram them through, they're going to have to try at least
3 times.
This has been a closer look. God's Love We Deliver cooks and brings over 2 million meals a year to men, women, and children living with HIV/AIDS, cancer, and other serious illnesses, and they need your help now more than ever. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button. Stay safe, get vaccinated. We love you.